All right, here we are live again with the What Did I Want to Be When I Grew Up? Let's get started today. Hey, Sam, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing, Jeremy?
Hanging in there. All right. So, in the ongoing theme of what did some other people want to be when they grew up, with a little of our own lives mixed in, I've got a person to guess. This one might be a little too easy for you, but that's okay. It's going to be an interesting person to
We'll
discuss a little bit.
we'll see. Yeah, we will see.
Yeah, we'll see.
Maybe it won't be.
Well, only because I gave away too many clues in a previous discussion, but let's see what we
Okay.
got. You're going to know after like the first or second clue. This one's an interesting
Okay.
one. This person started out working at a very popular Southern California theme park and was going to school to learn to become an animator at the same time. See, I see it on your face already. I can
Yeah.
tell you already know who
No,
the
no, you're
person is.
you're
Don't
good.
give it
Keep
away yet.
keep going.
I'm gonna,
I
I'm gonna
won't. I
give.
won't. This is great.
We'll see if anyone watching gets some of these clues as well. Okay, so the person was attending California Institute of the Arts. I think they call it Cal Arts. That's where a lot of Disney animators got their start, um, and actually got a job during the summers working for Disneyland. At one point, was a Jungle Cruise ride skipper, and came back years later to reprise that role just briefly, once or twice. That would have been a lot of fun. Um, and you already know it's a he in this case, so I can use his pronouns. He felt like the company had kind of gotten stuck in a rut back in the early 80s. He had been assigned to work on, I think it was Fox and the Hound, something like that. And he explained to the supervising animators that if they used computers to do some of the animation, they could have a lot more interesting and engaging imagery in the backgrounds. I mean, they already were using that multi-plane camera technology that Walt Disney and his team pioneered, where they have lots of layers, and that way they can move at different speeds and they don't have to redraw things as much. But they'd kind of stalled out, and I think in the wake of Walt Disney passing away in whatever it was, the early 70s or late 60s, I think a lot of people were a little demoralized in that way. But the really funny thing was, due to some miscommunication and things like that, he ended up getting fired from Disney. Ended up going over to another little startup company that I don't know, some of us may have heard of. At the time, it was very small, and they were making computer hardware for creating scientific computer images. But I mean, they were under the name Pixar, but they ultimately started making movies, which was absolutely not. Apparently, when the guy was hired, they had to put him down as a quality control technician or something like that because they weren't permitted to hire animators because that wasn't their business model. But they hired him anyway, and they started making shorts, and eventually came out with the first real full feature length film, Toy Story, and well, the rest is history. And I know you know who it is at this point. So who is that?
John Lasseter.
Yeah, that's right. He's a very well known name in the credits of every Pixar and Disney film ever. Though recently he's moved on to another company. He's now working with Skydance Animation, so I'm sure we'll see his fingerprints, as it were, on some other companies. The funny thing
Oh,
was
really?
that
When do you know when that happened? When he made that
in
move?
the last year or two, I'm not sure exactly, but
Oh,
pretty
okay. So
recently.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but it's funny that he was fired from the company originally for suggesting computer animation, and then Disney spent literally billions of dollars to get him back, along with the company that he had been working on building for so long. So
Yeah.
it's funny. If they had known then what they know now, they could have saved themselves a whole lot of money, I think.
Yeah. What was the story when we were talking about him the other day? You said that part of the deal, I think it was part of the deal of like purchasing Pixar was that John Lasseter had to come on and stay for some number of years, or
Had some type
do
of
you
employment contract term
something
in there.
like
Yeah, it
that?
was. Yeah, so not only did they fire him and spent billions to get him back, it was a term of the acquisition that he had to be brought along with. He couldn't just go and retire too quickly. Though apparently he's
Yeah,
still enjoying the animation stuff a lot, and he continues to. The fact that he moved over to another company, that suggests that he still enjoys the job at some level. And hey, who wouldn't,
Yeah,
right? When you have all those animators working for you, and you can just, yeah, I don't like that, or I do like that.
yeah.
I don't know what kind of a person he is to work for, but I know Walt Disney he was
Right.
like a scary guy to work for.
Yeah, I've heard stories of Walt Disney, like just like uber perfectionist, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, that would be hard. That'd be hard. I mean, talk about micromanaging,
Oh,
that'd be
the
rough.
story one of my high school teachers told me about Walt Disney was, yes, he's a micromanager. He's there at the studio, was there during the day a lot, overseeing things, and then at
Yeah.
night he would wander around, and the animators were required to leave their work out on their desks, and Walt would come by and check things in the middle of the night. So the guy apparently didn't
Oh,
sleep very often, and
he's like
and
a
if he didn't
vampire.
like and if he didn't like your work, he would just crumple it up into a ball. And if that happened more than a
What?
couple of times, you'd get fired sooner or later.
What?
So
Yeah,
no
like
pressure,
tally marks. Yeah, like
I
tally
guess.
marks, like crumpled balls. Like how many
Yeah.
how many crumpled balls have you had in the
If you
past
don't meet
six
Walt's
months or
standards,
something? Oh my goodness.
yeah,
Wow, that's rough. That'd be really tough. I can't imagine that going going home at the end of the day and just, praying, please let me have a job tomorrow. Oh my goodness. Please
yeah,
let me not find my work crumpled up on the desk.
mm-hmm, yeah, that'd be
Wow,
scary. Yeah, I've
that'd
heard
be
a
rough.
lot of those. The some of the biggest, richest, CEOs built amazing companies, but absolutely crushed the hearts and hopes and dreams of most of the people who work for them.
Oh my
It's
goodness. Yeah.
a scary or uncomfortable work environment.
Yeah, I remember hearing something, it wasn't too long ago I heard this, that someone talked about how a lot of times the most innovative people are a little bit like borderline insane. And Elon Musk was mentioned in this, and I thought,
Hmm.
I don't know anything about Elon Musk personally, or like very little from what you gather in the news and stuff. But that's an interesting idea though. Like I could see that being true where, someone like Walt Disney paving the way for something that has never been done before. No one's ever thought of this. You'd have to be a little off your rocker, I think, to even think that those ideas would even work, you know? Same
Yeah,
thing for Elon Musk and Steve Jobs is probably, you know, in that category too. I mean, you could go down the list. A lot of people would who have been some of the most innovative people were probably, at least compared to, the normal person, whatever that means. Um, you know, you could probably make a case that they're a little crazy, in
yeah.
comparison to like the average person.
It does make me
Anyway,
wonder.
that's fascinating.
th- there are, of course, there are the big names that we know about that are a little bit crazy and they're very successful. I wonder how many companies that fail also had crazy people running them. It'd be interesting to see,
Right.
is it really just that the crazy people happen to be successful, or is it just a few people, the ones that happen to be successful also happen to be a little on the crazy or micromanaging or over controlling side? Um,
Yeah.
and what happens when those over controlling people end up with a company that completely tanks? What does that do to your ego, right? You got no one to blame
That's
but
a really
yourself, I guess.
that's a really good point. That would be really interesting to like research that. Maybe I'm sure someone somewhere has done some research on that. If you're you see things like this all the time where, if you're successful, you're viewed as this champion or whatever it is. If you
Mhm.
fail, then you're viewed as a loser and like, you know, you know, people aren't really calling Steve Jobs crazy or Walt Disney crazy, but the the people who, went out on a limb and tried something new and then failed, oh, that guy's a total nut, you know.
Yeah.
that that's a tough reality.
There was a a really great ad campaign run by Apple for a while. You know, once you get big enough,
Yeah.
you start running ads that actually have very little to do with your products. And
Right.
you know,
Yeah,
so
you're a household name now, and
yeah, somebody said that about an Infinity car commercial once. They said, "Yeah, I saw an Infinity car commercial the other day, and there wasn't even a car in it." But the Apple was doing that for a good while, where
yeah.
they had this Think Different ad series, and they would
Oh yeah.
highlight these amazing people. So you know, they had one about Gandhi, and probably had one about Mother Teresa, and all of
Oh,
that.
yeah.
You might remember some of those, and those are
It's
cool
yeah,
because
it sounds familiar.
there's and it's plain white backgrounds, and a single voice monologue voiceover talking about what they did a little bit and how they made the world a better place. So
Yeah.
in that way, that was kind of cool, because that now highlights people that are that way, that do think differently and are successful. But yeah, there are a whole bunch of them out there probably that also think differently, but they end up not being all that successful.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting. I remember in college reading this case study. It was a business strategy class, and they
Hmm.
highlighted Apple actually, and they talked about how they talked about all these failures. They listed it was like 20 different products I'd never heard of because they're total flops.
Oh, the
Um,
Newton has to be on that list.
yeah, it was, and I was like, the Newton, what's that? And
The
anyway,
Mac Cube.
yeah, and they had all these products, and I was like, I've never heard of those. I don't know that I had ever heard of even one of those products. But then they said, like, I think the title of this little case study was it was something like, "Do you have to fail in order to succeed?" And they talked about all the failures that Apple had, but how they learned from those failures, and eventually were able to introduce some products that did, where they did hit it out of the park.
Hmm.
Um, And anyway, it was really interesting. Especially as a college student, you think, a failure is that's the end. Like you fail, it's
Yep.
over. But something like that case study, you know, I think gives you hope. Like, hey, it's okay if I go out and fail, as long as I learn from it and pick myself up and let's try again. And what's the story of Oh my goodness, I'm totally drawing a blank. The guy who invented the light bulb. Wow,
Yes.
this is
Thomas
bad.
Edison.
Thomas Edison,
I'm
thank you.
totally with you.
Oh my goodness, wow. What's the story with Thomas Edison where uh, he was asked one time about all the different, like he had, 100 or more failures with the light bulb. And I think it was some reporter who asked him, I might be botching this story, but someone asked him one time, like, what did you learn from that? Or
Hmm.
I don't remember what the question was. And he said, well,
Yeah.
I
How
learned,
did it feel to fail so many times, or something like that? He
yeah,
said
something,
something
yeah,
along the lines of, I didn't fail. I didn't fail 1,000 times.
yes,
I actually learned 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb, until he finally
yes,
came up with I think it was finally the carbonized cotton filament is what they settled on. And interestingly, moving
yeah,
forward, they ended up with tungsten, which is one of the hardest metals around, and could take that kind of heat inside the light bulb.
yeah, yeah. That attitude is so incredible. How many people would, after the first dozen failures, would be like, I can't do this. I'm a failure. Or this will never work. Maybe I need to go back to accounting, or in those days, maybe it was like banking or something. Um,
Yeah,
but I love that attitude. It's like, hey, I'm learning from this, and let me just keep going. I'll get it eventually. I'll figure it out. It might take me 1,000 times, but I'll figure it out.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, the success stories are the ones that get all the attention, but the failures are the ones where there's actually a really interesting backstory in a lot
Yeah,
of
yeah,
cases. Uh,
yeah. Like
there's another
do you,
one.
go ahead, go
No,
ahead.
go ahead. No, it's all
No, no.
yours.
Okay. All right, all right. Um, I was just gonna say, like, I want. Do you know more about John Lasseter's story? Bring it back to him a little bit. Um, you know, certainly being fired from Disney, with that being your dream job, and it sounds like he was living his life and following a
Mhm.
path to work for Disney, and then it comes like just crumbling down around you. Like, what do I do
Yeah,
now? I mean, it's not like you could just move on to another. I don't even know if there was another competitor at that time. It seems like it's always
not
just been
really.
Disney in terms of like
Yeah.
animation, you know? So it's like my one and only shot. I get fired from it. Like, good luck ever getting back there. But then, he picks himself up and keeps going and finds himself involved it like as part like a key part of this multi-billion dollar deal. Do
Yeah.
you know much of
I
his story?
I read a few things that were outlined. None of it had been like was directly from his perspective, but was
Yeah,
at least from some maybe acquaintances or something like that. But when
yeah,
he first got fired, when they told him at the end of this project, there's nothing more for you here, or your services are no longer needed, kind of a thing. He then went on and interacted in social or networking environments with some of the people that he was going to work with in Pixar and other people who would connect him with Pixar and so on. And he actually was so demoralized by losing his position at Disney, he wouldn't even tell them that he had been fired. He just said something along the lines of, "Well, that project's coming to a close," and other people just
oh,
assumed, "Oh, well, that just means that he's between projects. Disney will be putting him on something else soon." He didn't have the heart
yeah,
to tell them. And I
uh,
completely get
yeah,
that. I mean, that was, like you
yeah,
said, that was his dream. How can you possibly manage to recover from that? But he did. It was amazing that the way that it came to pass, that he would still, you know, get up each day and work on these opportunities and still continue networking, and was able to ultimately be hired. And once they found out that he had been laid off, one of the other people that knew John, because he was a very amazing animator and storyteller, even at that time, as soon as one of the people, I think one of the people at then Pixar, heard, hey, I heard John Lasseter got laid off from Disney, told that to another associate. Don't know who this person was, but they were probably a very capable person in another company, and said, hire him today, immediately. So
oh
they
wow,
they gave him a very strong endorsement. So even though it didn't work out for him there, his skills, his hard work, all of that paid off in other people knowing that he was a very good person in that respect. Like
yeah,
everybody, I'm sure, had challenges and difficulties. He could be very much like one of those bosses that would be very painful to work with. I don't know. Maybe he was the Walt Disney type. He'd go around and crumple up your computer monitor at night if he didn't like
oh
your
my
animation work.
goodness. It takes
So
a baseball bat to the monitor. If you
yeah,
come back to work tomorrow with a baseball bat in your monitor or a hammer through it,
yeah,
it's over for you. Like, you've been fired.
yeah,
Your crazy boss has just fired you.
yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that way, that there are so many people like that they're the famous ones and all of that. But thinking about it, most of them I don't think I would ever want to work for, because of the various forms of um, difficult behaviors or personality kind of
Yeah,
things, might make it difficult for the people actually working for them, especially if they're the kind who ends up taking all the credit or getting all the credit. You've got people that have become massively successful. Elon Musk is one example. I read somewhere,
yeah,
we all think of Elon Musk and Tesla, right, as
yeah.
basically being equated with one another. From what I've read, he didn't even help found the company. He got brought in later on. Other people
Oh,
came
really?
up with the idea and founded it, and then they brought him in, and he's the big figurehead and all of that. But I bet there is an enormous
Really?
team, and most of the really good ideas are probably coming out of that team, and not
Yeah,
from him himself. And similarly with Steve Jobs, like you're saying, with all the failures at Apple, a lot of the bad ideas came from Steve, and a lot of the good ones did too. But how many of those ideas actually started from other people and then
right.
taken, reshaped, and taken credit for by the people at the top? I'm sure the same thing can be said of most big companies.
Yeah. Yeah, that it's interesting. I've read before where this idea of like the best bosses are the ones who don't feel like they are the smartest person in the room. They
Yeah.
let the genius of others come to the forefront, and in fact they encourage it. They like try to pull it out of them. Like, I know you have something in you that can help
Hmm.
our company, help our team, and I am here to facilitate your genius.
Yeah,
Um,
that's cool.
and then you have bosses like what you described, where they are the smartest one in the room. They at least that's in their mind. Everybody knows it, and it really stifles creativity. So that's
Hmm.
surprising. Like, I don't know how that works though, because you have people like the micromanagers who are these really innovative people, but highly like micromanaging types and all that stuff. They're the smartest one in the room, and yet they've still been able to find success. So obviously,
Yeah.
I don't know how all that works, but that is curious to me.
Yeah, the one thing that annoys me is when you get because I've worked for those bosses that are they I don't know if they're just taking credit, but maybe they don't even care about the credit, but what they do is they hoard all of the stock options to themselves, and they're really bad. They won't share around the equity, and you end up been through this firsthand. You end up and the word gets out, hey, the company's being acquired, and you're like, oh, cool, great. So you
Oh
start
man.
wondering about how it's going to turn out, and it turns out that the boss was playing it a little fast and loose with what how much of the company you actually owned, and you end up
Oh
with
man.
a tiny little piece. Oh wow, the company sold for X number of millions of dollars, and by the way, you're going to get you're basically going to get an extra paycheck out of the deal or something
Oh
like that.
man. Hey, and for all the service you rendered, we'll throw in a ham sandwich for you.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Oh,
Thank
and
you.
by the way, in about 6 weeks, you're probably all going to get laid off anyway.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I remember going through my first merger, um, and one guy I was talking to, we just kind of bumped into each other in the break room one day, and this guy said the lasting advice that I remember from that conversation was he said, make sure that you have a soft place to land. I was like, what?
Hmm.
Like this young father, like um, we had kids at home and everything. I'm like, what do you mean soft place to land?
Yeah.
Anyway, I didn't get laid off in that merger, but I saw a lot of people who did, and I thought, oh my goodness, this is crazy.
Yeah.
That was, you know, now it's like, okay, I know that's what to expect, but at that time it was like, I can't believe I was
Yeah.
just talking to that guy yesterday. We were just working on this project together yesterday. Now he's literally walking out the door with a box and all this
Yep.
stuff in there. And oh, that was a little nerve-wracking. It was crazy.
Yeah. In the case of the one when they bought out, I didn't wait around for any layoffs, and I don't think they really had much in the way of layoffs eventually.
Yeah,
But the whole situation, I ended up packing up the box myself and moving on someplace else after a few
getting
months.
out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
was it
good.
was it be go ahead. Were you gonna say something?
No, I packed up my box and I put my like employee of the year trophy in there, that kind of thing.
Of course.
That was another funny story thing too. At that particular company, I got the Employee of the Year trophy. I'm like, really? I didn't think the CEO liked me that much. Turns out that it wasn't the CEO that made the decision that year. It was voted on by the other employees.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah.
Wow. That's 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 interesting. The perspectives that different people have of you. You see this all the time in sports. They hand out awards for the season at the end of the season, and some sports have awards that are handed out or voted on. I don't know if it's like an
Hmm.
actual award or if it's just like more of a survey,
Yeah.
but it'll be like the best player according to the coaches or the general managers, these people
Right.
in the front office positions. And then even like sports writers, well, a lot of their awards are handed out based on sports writers, not the people who are actually playing, but just like the fans, essentially.
Yeah. People's
But
Choice Award,
then,
that kind of thing.
yeah, that sort of thing. But then when you hear, they'll also have like awards that are voted on by their fellow players, you know,
Hmm.
and those awards sometimes they'll be similar, but sometimes they'll be very different. And it's really interesting to see the difference, like, like you're saying, coworkers and colleagues, what their opinion is of you versus your boss.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like we all know as the employees, we all know who's like driving the ship here. But
Right.
the boss is noticing the most charismatic ones, and that's a nice way of
Yeah.
saying ones who are
Right.
kind of
That's it.
front of it. But yeah. Um, but yeah, it's that's interesting. That I'm gonna do that someday. When I'm
Oh
running
yeah.
my own business, I'm going to do some awards. Like I want to see like what do you what does everybody else think? You know,
Yeah.
like
It's a good way to do
from
it.
my perspective, I think I know who is the best teammate and the most helpful and these sorts of things. But honestly, I don't know. Like, what do you what does everybody else think?
Hmm.
That'd be really interesting to see.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very cool. Well, that's one of the things that we don't really spend much time talking about. The company that you and I have done work together in, the Constellation Labs
Yeah.
consulting stuff, but that's the coolest thing we have is we don't have a CEO or anything like that. We've got a few people that manage the contract type stuff, but basically it's
Yeah.
just a bunch of us engineers all working together doing really cool and amazing projects, and you don't have to worry about kissing up to a boss or anything like that because
Right.
there really isn't one
So
that way.
nice.
And the weird thing is, yeah, if the company had been set up as one of these traditional firms where you have partners and all that kind of stuff, yeah, maybe it would have grown bigger, faster. Maybe it would be a very well-known organization or something like that. But at the same time, would it then have sacrificed the humanity and the ability to have just good, healthy friendships and relationships with coworkers instead of that creepy competition among people?
Right. I my biggest complaint, at every company I've ever worked for has always been my bosses. I don't think I've ever had any lasting complaints about coworkers. Um, but bosses, I remember hearing this great presentation by Liz Wiseman. She's a management consultant, and she's in the Bay Area, and she was presenting at Stanford to some graduate students. And she was asked a question by one of them. It was like, what advice do you have for? It was like a bunch of MBA students, I think is what it was. And someone asked the question like, what advice do you have, like career advice, or like as we're going out looking for jobs, something like that. Like, what advice do you have? And she said, as you are interviewing with potential employers, make sure that you are also interviewing your potential bosses, your potential managers,
Right.
because they will dictate to a large degree your opportunities, your bonuses and salary and like raises and all these things, and I've had bosses, I think if you've worked long enough for other people, you have experienced this sort of thing where um, you will run into situations where you have bosses who just they want you to succeed and they will give you opportunities, and then you'll run into bosses who are like, um, no, we can't let you transfer to a different team. You're too valuable to me here, and it like holds you
Hmm.
back. And it's like
Yep.
I've had that. Oh my goodness, like I'm still burned up about that sometimes. Like I mean, not like terribly, but like thinking back on it, it's like my name was brought up specifically in this meeting. We need someone who has these skills, specific skill set, and my name was brought up. Oh, you mean like Sam? And my boss like, oh no, we can't let Sam go over there. Like that got back to me, and I was like, that was the beginning of the end. Like I cannot
Right.
believe you
They
would
just
do that.
totally stunted your career opportunity because oh no, we have to keep you here. Well, I get that, but you
Yeah,
need to be
I
able to
need to
train
look good.
replacements. They ended up
Yeah,
losing you anyway because
yeah,
they didn't want to let you progress.
yeah. Oh my goodness, I could not believe that. I was so burned up about that.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, So
Cool.
I was stuck
Well, maybe we
in a
should
junior
wrap up
level
for
position.
today. What do
Yeah,
you think?
yeah. This has been a great conversation.
Oh yeah, it's good stuff. See, we didn't need to prepare a whole ton of stuff. It's good.
Yeah.
We'll be back again next week, and hopefully I can get LinkedIn to start cooperating. Their system just really doesn't like doing live streaming very well,
Yeah. We'll get it
but
we'll get
YouTube
it
seems to be
worked
working
out.
great.
And by we, I mean you. You're the you're the genius with all that stuff.
Ah, I like the background though. This is a very cool city. Just
Yes,
don't fall off the back of the building we're apparently on top of.
that's right.
All right. We didn't have any live comments today. At least I don't think so. If so, I missed them. Sorry. But hoping to hear from people in the future. As always, like, comment, subscribe, click the notification bell, all that fun stuff, and hopefully we'll see and or hear from you in future